What if we had all of our self-help exactly backwards wrong? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about how to improve our lives one small step at a time. I've been thinking about this for a little bit, and I think a lot of times when we hear advice, particularly when it comes with sort of self-help advice, it comes in exactly backwards and not really in this sort of dramatic way. But we've been taught there's this sort of order of how we fix things in our lives. And I don't think it's quite right. I think it's actually quite backwards. And we're going to talk about how that works. It goes something like this, that first you understand yourself, and then you heal from all the things that you went through. Then you get brave, and then after that, you start living differently. You have to fix every one of your pasts until you can start acting the way that you want to act. And on the surface of it, it sounds very responsible, maybe even thoughtful, that we take things in that particular order. But I think it's that order that is getting people stuck all the time. Think about it like this, that in my own life, or even in the people that I've watched over my own life, real change doesn't come after clarity. It comes before it. We actually change our lives and then we gain clarity into our problems. So let me give you an example of it. We picture that we have to be, let's say we have to be disciplined. We're disciplined because we have to get up in the morning and get ready and do hard things, right? And that's how it's going to work. We think about things like discipline, that one day in the morning, we'll wake up and we're going to have discipline and we're going to be ready to go and we're going to go do the hard things. And that's not usually how it works. What usually works is you do the hard thing. You feel a little nervous at first, a little unsure. You're not sure how it's going to go. You're sure if you're going to like this or going to like this pattern. Maybe you even feel like you have no idea what you're doing. And then you get to the other side of it and you realize, hey, I just did it. You were okay. And that's when you gain confidence. And that's when you start getting discipline or grit or bravery. In these particular cases, you didn't have to learn how to be disciplined or learn how to be brave. Actually, it's the result of you taking action. And that's what matters the most, because we're sitting around waiting to feel ready, waiting before we take the next step, waiting and waiting and waiting. And we may be waiting for a very long time. I think I did that in my 20s. This whole idea, when we hear about it, is we think that we have to understand ourselves first. It sounds very catchy, and a lot of people do that, and a lot of therapies and self-help books go about that there's some sort of deep truth that shaped your past, some pattern that has roots in something and how you grew up, some deep psychological burden that you have. And once you understand what that is, how your parents messed this up, or how this betrayal led to this or that, or how this set up this pattern for your whole life. And then once you understand it, you'll be able to move past it and get to what really matters. And it makes me feel like you have to excavate your entire personal history, figure it all out before you can make different choices today. And so the people will go and journal, and they will talk to a life coach, and they will revisit the same stories over and over because they're looking for a root cause that caused them. And once they understand this root cause, it's going to unlock everything. Meanwhile, the thing that's actually hurting them today is the fact that they're still sitting and not doing action on it. And what if you didn't have to understand why you avoid this or that, why you have troubles trusting, or you have trouble saving money, or you have troubles losing weight, or you're not capable of having hard conversations? What if you didn't have to understand that and you just tried to have a hard conversation? You just tried to actually lose weight. You just tried to save money when you found it impossible. What if you don't have to have your whole childhood sorted out before you set one boundary this week, before you do the next right thing, before you understand what is gonna come on later, you just start doing it. And what happens is that when you, find out, and this is what I found out through all of it, when you act first, you start getting clarity on everything else, not less. You start getting feedback from real life instead of inside your own head, and you'll notice, "Oh, I always slow things down right here. Or I always get stuck right at this point. Now I see why." And sometimes a situation comes about where you do something and you go, "Oh, that wasn't as bad as I built it up in my own head." Actions don't actually solve problems, but it reveals the problem more clearly. And by doing that, it then quietly heals the pieces of the things you never sat down and formally addressed before. You don't have to analyze your way to a better life. You can live your life one small step at a time and then understand why or the tendencies after that point. Think about them when you have, you're mowing your grass and you're trying to noodle over things, but you don't actually have to know them before you make real progress. Sometimes when you genuinely are relieved about this or that, and what's really relieving about this whole process is because to fully understand yourself before you move feels like you have to finish a puzzle and you're not even sure that you have all the pieces. This whole process of understanding our past is slow, it's heavy, it can turn into a lot of waiting, and it's all dressed up in I'm actually working on myself. I'm making progress by understanding myself better. And I'm not saying that reflection is bad. I reflect all the time. There's different ways I do reflection on there, on my life and everything else. There is value in understanding where you've been. But the difference is whether you are stopping your entire life while you're looking at your past, letting it be the gatekeeper to every good thing that you're going to do here in your present time. And you're going to stop everything. You're going to halt everything. But you know what? You are allowed to make different choices today, even if you didn't fully understand yesterday. You are allowed to take one small step, even if everything isn't sorted out, if you don't have a complete plan. Because your life doesn't ultimately change in 1 moment of insight. It changes actually in ordinary moments. When you say something that you would have normally said something different, when you acted differently, when you make a phone call that was hard for you, when you took a walk, when you cleaned the kitchen, the small things and the quiet things that don't feel like huge breakthroughs, that's when things actually start to shift of who you are. Once you start shifting, then understanding comes out of it. And so you might ask the question, why am I like this? So I had problems saving my money my whole life. And I can tell you why. It's because my dad stole all my money at one point. I had money that I earned from babysitting and working in an office in my school and working for a newspaper. And when we moved to our new town, my dad says, well, we're going to take your money out of your bank account. And then we land in the new town. I'll put that money in the bank account for you so that you have it in our new location. Oh, okay. He stole every dime of it. And when I pitched a fit about it, he bought me a stereo that cost $80, which was not even a hundred. It was not even close to that money. And said, "Here, now shut up about your money." And it made me really just like I at that point I just started spending every dime I had. Now I could have spent my whole life noodling about that, thinking about that. How do I heal from that? And how do I get over that? And instead, at some point, I got to the place where I had to have an emergency savings or I would lose this house. I had to have a retirement savings or I would be eating dog food when I retired. At one point, I just had to act. And once I started acting, it started revealing to me what my hidden problems with money in my soul are. So the acting actually caused it. And as I started having breakthroughs, as I started making progress, then I started gaining understanding. That's why I've been like this. I've never trusted that if I put money away in a bank, it'll be there for me. Something will happen. Something will go wrong. And you know what? For the most part, nothing ever goes wrong. So you start asking yourself a more simple question when you do it in the opposite way. One small thing I can do today that would make a difference in this area? Not because you're ready to do it or because you figured it all out, but because you're willing to move anyway. You want to start. Just get started doing something. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you being out there. I hope this inspires you to start acting today, doing one small step that will make that one area of your life just a little bit better, regardless of what psychology, childhood traumas, bad opinions you had of it. Just start acting. Just start moving today. I read a story, and this is what got me thinking about the topic, where basically this person's opinion of the stock market, essentially. I don't want to get too complicated. He just believes that the stock market is just a bunch of thieves, essentially. So he never invested in his retirement in the stock market. He just basically put it in, any savings he had in just a simple savings account for his retirement. And at one point, he saw how much money he would have had he invested it in the stock market in 1992 when he started savings for it. And he realized his whole life he had been wrong, that the stock market was a way, because it's a long-term investment for him, that he would be able to make money over decades and compound his money through investment more than what you do. Most people do not save for their retirement. They invest for their retirement. So I guess that's the whole point, is he had this assumption of mistrust in his life. And what he started doing is he just started investing and putting his investments, because like I said, he's a young guy. He had a lot of time in there. But sometimes we get caught up in a misconception that is just throwing us the wrong direction. And maybe you don't have time to go around and challenge that misconception. Maybe it's time for you to just act. Appreciate you being out there. Have a great day.